Most players dramatically underuse turn overbets, and it costs them a lot of EV. In this video, I'll show you when and why to overbet the turn, when not to, and how to think about building your ranges and sizings around it. So before we look at some hands, here's a simple framework for when turn overbets make sense. Number one is c-betting on blank turns, especially after we c-bet the flop for a small size. This is probably the most common scenario. We get a lot of overbetting, especially on double Broadway boards here. For example, we open the hijack, big blind calls, flop is king, queen, deuce, rainbow, and we go B40 and they call. And turn is an offsuit 5. Here we should often go for a geometric size, which is going to be around 170% of the pot at 100 big blinds with a polar range. This can also apply for out of position, especially in small blind versus big blind situations, but it is going to come up more often when we're in position. Number two of when we should commonly overbet is when we're probe betting the turn with a significant range advantage. And we will get more into this as we look at some hands. And then number three is delay c-betting out of position on blank turns, again, when we have a significant range advantage. This is structurally the same as probe betting because in both cases our range can be uncapped against a weaker range after in position checks back the flop. And now I'm going to go over when not to overbet, because a lot of times when players are kind of working on new concepts or strategies to implement, they don't necessarily do it in the right situations. And so when we generally should not be overbetting are number one, when we're going for a delay c-bet in position. This is because generally our range is capped or at least weaker after we check back the flop. Number two is when we're float betting the turn. So this means the pre-flop raiser or the flop better checks to us on the turn and we're in position. Generally, we should not be using an overbet for our sizing there. Number three is donk betting turns, with one rare exception that comes up more with MTT ranges. But the vast majority of your donk bet sizes should be 25% or 40% of the pot. And number four, more generally, on significant texture shifts after we bet the flop. So for instance, if we c-bet the flop and there are some straight draws and gut shots possible, and then the turn makes a straight possible, then usually we should not be using an overbet size in that situation. More commonly, we're going to use B67, occasionally pot. It depends, but the point is don't overbet there. Now let's dive into three hands, one from each scenario that we should be commonly overbetting. I'll walk through each in the Drive HUD replayer first, and then we'll take a look at it in GTO Wizard. So here's the first hand. Since I already showed you a more traditional hand in the framework, here's a spot where we're not the pre-flop raiser, but I'm still considering it a turn c-bet spot. So small blind opens to 3.5x. We defend in the big blind with jack 3 suited. Flop is queen 5 deuce. I go for a B67 size here because since there are two low cards on the board, there are a lot of hands in our opponent's range that we want one big-ish street of value from that we're not likely to get value from later. Stuff like 5x, pocket sixes, whatever. We don't have to bet this combo, but I chose to go for it here. And our opponent calls. The turn is effectively a blank, and we have a significant top of range advantage here since our opponent did not check raise flop. So I decided to go for a 2E size here, and my opponent folded. Let's take a look at this in Wizard now. So here's our optimal betting range for a B67 size. So we bet, and if we look at our opponent's response to the bet, we actually see that they're raising all of their pocket fives, all of their pocket deuces, the ones that they get here with, all of the pocket queens, and obviously all the two pairs, so the queen 5, most of the queen deuce suiteds. So when they just call, their range is significantly weaker. So let's keep that in mind when we go to the 7 of hearts turn. Our opponent pure checks, of course. And yeah, if we look at our optimal bet size, it is 118% pot, which is a 2E size, meaning if we bet this size and get called, then we're going to have a 118% pot jam size on the river. I think it's worth noting here that even though our range versus range equity is only 41%, because we have such a significant top of range advantage, we want to be betting large and infrequently. And so if we take a look at some of our hand strengths, we can see that 4.2% of our range is sets and 5.6% of our range is two pair. And if we compare that to the small blind, they basically don't have sets, about 0.5% of their range and 1.9% two pairs. So again, we just have such a significant top of range advantage that we want to be going for the overbet here. Let's take a look at how this overbetting range is actually constructed. We can see we're basically pure betting queen jack for value. Looks like that's the bottom of our pure value range. We can be betting some queen nine as well, especially the ones that don't block a heart or a club. And of course, we can have our sets and two pair that are going to pure bet for value. And if we take a look at where our bluffs are coming from, we get a lot of these combos that contain a 3 and a 4 because they are going to unblock a lot of our opponent's flop calls and turn folds. And also that it's nice to have an overcard to the queen for when we do get called. So we can see pretty much all of our king 3 and king 4 suited like to bet, even the ones without a flush draw, a good amount of the time at least. And of course our gut shots with ace 3 and ace 4, our weaker gut shots, the 6-3 combos, even some of our just Broadway combos here like to go for a bet, presumably because we block some queen X combos in our opponent's range and we still have some equity with the overcard when we are called. And then, yeah, some flush draws as well. For instance, our hand, Jack 3 suited with a flush draw, looks like we want to be pure overbetting with those combos as well. And I think it's worth noting as well that, again, this is a 2E size, so at 100 bigs deep with this action, it's going to be 118%. But let's just real quick see how that would change if we were, let's say, 150 bigs deep to start the hand. And let's just change our bet size to be 67. Shouldn't matter a ton. I still prefer it. Small blind calls, and again on the 7 of hearts. Yeah, so here we see that we are overbetting with a similar frequency, but just a larger size. So I think that covers this hand. Let's move on to the second hand, which is a turn probe spot. Here we have queen 6 suited in the big blind. The hijack opens to 2.5x, and we have a standard defend. We get a Jack 10-7 rainbow board. I don't necessarily think we want to be leading here. In position is still going to have 9-8 suited and sets and two pair, and so we go for the pure check, and our opponent checks back. Here we have the 3 of hearts, and I thought this would be a good spot to go for a 250% pot overbet probe. It's a spot where even though in position is not capped on the flop, after they check back the flop, they're pretty capped. I expect them to be betting the vast majority of their straights, if not all of them, same with their two pair and so on. And since we flatted in the big blind and pure checked the flop, we still have plenty of combos of straights, two pairs, some sets, and so on. And so I decided to go for a 2E bet size here, and we got a fold, and let's take a look at it in GTO Wizard. So yeah, here we can see that we don't get leads out of position. In position is going to go for a B40 size with their C bet size, but they check back here. And after the 3 of hearts, in fact, our best bet size is B247, which is a 2E size. First, let's just check our combo. Yeah, it seems like queen 6 suited with hearts is basically pure overbetting here. Again, if we look at the equity chart, it's actually another situation where we have less than 50% equity, range versus range, only 42%, but we have a top of range advantage, which we can very clearly see. And so again, this is a good situation to go for a 2E bet size. We're going to have pocket threes for value, straights, two pair. If we take a look at the worst hand that wants to value bet here, looks like probably ace jack, specifically with a heart, or two hearts sometimes. And if we look at where our bluffs are going to come from, they are going to be a lot of flush draws, some straight draws with king queen and queen 9. Occasionally we're turning, bottom pair into a bluff with these 3x combos. Some ace-9 suited combos, which obviously block the straight and have the overcard and the gut shot. So I think this betting range is actually pretty intuitive and not that difficult to implement, which is often the case for sort of a polar range. And yeah, just don't be afraid to bet 250% of the pot, because pretty often it is the best play. And now let's check out this third hand that I have. This last hand that I'm going to show you is actually a hand I misplayed, but I want to go over the spot to focus on refining our combo selection when going for overbets. So here we're 7-handed, and I open pocket 6s under the gun +1 flats, and everyone else folds. We get a 9-7 deuce flop, which I choose to pure check. So we go for a check, and our opponent checks back. And we get the 3 of diamonds. Here, I thought that we wanted to go for a 2e overbet delay c-bet size. And I thought that we wanted to include some small pocket pairs with a diamond occasionally. And so I chose to bet this combo a third of the time, and I rolled high. And so I went for the bet. I did already check it, and this is a pure check. But we went for the overbet, and our opponent folds. Let's bring it up in Wizard now and take a look at how the strategies are working here. So if we look at the range interaction on the flop, we see that in position has 55% equity and a big nut range advantage and position. So when all of those things are true, we should be pure checking out of position, which I did. If we look at in position's betting range, they're mostly betting their sets and a lot of their overpairs. And once they check back, something shifts. They still have an equity advantage, but now we have the top of range advantage, since now we're going to have more sets and more aces and kings. And so even though in position retains an equity advantage, we want to implement an overbet. So it looks like our optimal bet size here is 215% of the pot, which is again a 2e geometric size. If we take a look at how pocket 6s play, they pure check. It does look like pocket 5s with a diamond and pocket 4s with a diamond want to bet a fair amount of the time. So I wasn't too far off. I did decide in game to pure check 8s and occasionally bet 6s with a diamond, but definitely a good refinement to make here. And if we take a look at our bluffs here, we can have some gut shots and straight draws. And then also just 2 overcards with a diamond often gets bet here. If we take a look at, the queen jack offsuit and the king queen offsuit, again with a diamond, those are going to want to bet pretty frequently. Same with ace queen, ace jack with the ace of diamonds. And I think our value range here is pretty intuitive. Also we can pick up some flush draws with some of these combos that we're going to want to include in our betting range as well. So that's the last hand we're going to look at in this video. And now you have a framework for finding profitable turn overbets and a process for verifying them in the solver. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And if you want more solver-based cash game strategy, you can check out another video or hit subscribe. Links are in the description if you want to study along, and see you in the next one.